by pro-Russian separatists.
And those artillery rounds are sending Fox News foreign correspondent Trey Yingst and his crew. They were running for cover while reporting live with us just yesterday. Take a look.
You can hear those explosions in the distance. Those were incoming rounds. That's what the Ukrainian military has been dealing with the past 48 hours. They say they are following the Minsk protocols and that it's the Russian-backed forces, you hear in the distance there are more explosions, that are violating this agreement.
Trey Yingst joins us live from Kiev. Now, Trey, you did that reporting for us yesterday in the field. Amazing firsthand stuff. And now we're hearing more reports that that type of artillery is exactly what we saw across that eastern front. Where are we right now?
Guys, good morning. Exactly. That's what the Ukrainian military has been dealing with all week. This artillery and mortar fire into their positions along the line of contact there in eastern Ukraine. These Russian-backed separatists are really hammering the Ukrainian military even at this hour. To give you a sense of what it's like out there, over the past several months, each day saw about 2 to 5 ceasefire violations. Yesterday, 1,500 were reported in these two eastern areas, the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk. And the real concern right now is that this could be a pretext, the erupting violence in this part of the country, to turn into a larger invasion that could be launched by Russian President Vladimir Putin. We see the troops along the border, and today Belarus announced that the military exercises that are taking place with Russia are going to continue for an indefinite amount of time. This is a major indicator that the tension in the region has really reached its highest point. Now, what happens in the coming days? That's the big question. The military and the soldiers that we spoke to on the front lines yesterday said they're prepared for anything. The interior minister who we were traveling with yesterday said the forces across Ukraine are ready to repel a Russian attack. The reality could be much more dire. Right now, the Ukrainian military continues to ask for foreign assistance in the forms of anti-aircraft missiles, air defense, and anti-tank missiles. While weapons are still arriving here in the capital of Kiev to be dispersed throughout the country, it's simply not enough for the nearly 200,000 Russian troops that are estimated to be on the borders of Ukraine. Back to you.
Trey, that's a great update. So I'd love to take you back to yesterday and that footage, which took place right here on Fox and Friends Weekend. It was amazing footage, firsthand account of what you were going through with those Ukrainian troops. Can you give us a little bit more context? We're describing it as eastern Ukraine, but I'm curious, where are you in relation? That field we're watching you run down, that mud road, where are you? Just on the outskirts of a city? Where are the separatists? Where are the Ukrainian front lines? I'm just curious geographically what kind of situation you're dealing with, urban, just outside of the urban area. What is the front line?
The front line looks very much like World War I. We were inside the trenches with these troops, and it's quite muddy, cold, and difficult conditions for these soldiers. And they're used to taking this type of incoming fire, but we were with a group of journalists and a group of soldiers who were part of this delegation traveling with the interior minister. And when you see the faces of these soldiers and officials, they were quite worried as the rounds started. When we were up live on Fox and Friends, this was about halfway through the situation. We were inside a bunker, and the first sort of plan was to stay in this bunker and wait it out. But as the fire got closer and closer, and you could really get a sense that we may be trapped in this position, we knew we had to move. And so the call was made by the forces that we were with to really make a run for it. And as that was happening on both sides of where we were, there was this incoming fire. So there was a sense and a concern that I had that they may be trying to bracket this area. And going during the clip that you saw in the live coverage, everyone sort of got down on the ground on that road. And around where we were, there were big holes in the road because it had taken fire in the past 48 hours. So they clearly had calibrated to hit this road because it was used by the troops. In terms of location, this was just east of the city of Donetsk, right on the line of contact. So we're within a few hundred meters of Russian-backed separatists who were firing on these positions. And again, as we speak today, the soldiers and civilians who live in this part of the country are taking fire. And they really are the real story. You know, we are there to report and tell their story. And then we're able to come back to the capital of Kiev. Right now, we are standing on a balcony, and the city behind us is quite calm. These soldiers and civilians on the front line, they have to deal with this every single day. And that's really the concern for this country, is that the fighting and violence that are erupting in the eastern part of the country right now could consume all of Ukraine in the coming days.
Yeah, and Trey, you know, the president of Ukraine is really getting very forceful, or at least speaking up much more loudly with publicly about President Biden and asking him to bring on sanctions now as a way to stop more aggression from the Russians. What are you hearing on, and not wait till after things get worse to do the sanctions? What are you hearing on the ground? I mean, you're talking to Ukrainians, the soldiers and people in the civilian population. Where are they with this? Do they also want sanctions now?
Ukrainian officials absolutely want sanctions to go into effect today. And we saw Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky yesterday in Munich calling for these sanctions, but also making very clear that Ukraine does want to pursue NATO membership. Now, by doing that, he is directly speaking to Russian President Putin and addressing the major concern that he has that Ukraine ultimately could become a member of this defense alliance. So it was seen by the international observers as really a direct request, but also a direct rebuke to the Russians, who are very clear. If Ukraine pursues this path, they will not let that happen. And there is time really running out for diplomacy to prevail. There's a real sense, not only in the West, from the statements by President Biden and Defense Secretary Austin, that President Putin has made up his mind to invade. But the mood here in Kiev has changed over recent days. Last weekend, I talked to the Ukrainian president and asked him about the intelligence he's received regarding a possible Russian invasion. And at first, he kind of dismissed it, basically saying he has different intel. We've seen a big shift in tone by the Ukrainian president in recent days, saying that the country is prepared, but the international community needs to prepare. And that preparation looks like more support to the Ukrainian military and more economic pressure on the Russian government in the form of sanctions.
Trey Yingst, thank you very much for breaking it down.